Until then, we got ourselves another onslaught of werewolf films in yet another Werewolf-athon. Once again, we're drawn into the 80s, and the films I have were also suggested by a friend from the first marathon, and all of whom happened to date in 1985, so Werewolf-athon 1985 edition? And I'm going to start off with the one that I found the most interesting, Teen Wolf. Starring Michael J. Fox of Back to the Future fame, which incidentally came out the same year as this film. Here he plays yet another high school student who undergoes a strange transformation. The film was directed by the late Rod Daniel, which would be his first film he directed, though it's unfortunate that his filmography isn't of any successes. Reception-wise at least. Hell, it seems his best film to date was Teen Wolf. And how is that? Well, let's find out as I take you back to school and face the Teen Wolf. Intense? This is Scott Howard, an average high school student playing for the school's basketball team, the Beavers. As you can see, the Beavers are not very good at what they do. However, there's something unusual about Scott. Looks like someone's cranky for not eating their breakfast. Even though it wasn't like they were going to win anyway, they treat this shot like it's epic. Seriously, the music is up there with the Baywatch music. Scott lives about as average a high school life as one can have, even having obnoxious friends with lame t-shirts.
What you owe me? You owe me. Listen, Scott, this is important. If I don't come up with the cake for tonight, they won't let me into that party. Look, even if you come up with cash, where are you gonna buy? Let me buy. Later. Two. Later. Hey, Chubb, how's the diet?
Hey, Lemonade, give me 5, man. You were terrific out there, Lemonade.
What the hell is that?
The sign of becoming a man is when you start growing chest hair, though that's a pretty long chest hair. Scott's been wanting to leave the team, thinking he isn't cut out for it, but his coach convinces him to stay with some questionable dialogue.
Look, Scotty, I know what you're going through. A couple years back, a kid came to me much the same way you're coming to me now, saying to me pretty much the same thing that you're saying. He wanted to drop off the team. Mother was a widow, all crippled up. She was scrubbing floors. She had this pin in her hip. So he wanted to drop basketball and get a job. Now, these were poor people. These were hungry people with real problems. You understand what I'm saying?
What happened to the kid?
I don't know, he quit.
Anyway, he mostly hangs with his friend Lisa, often called Boof, and often complains about his boring, average life. He's also oblivious to the fact that she might have a thing for him while he wants to date some other girl named Pamela. But his life is about to take a turn, for as we get acquainted with his father, Harold, played by James Hampton, another thing occurs.
Yeah, we going down to high school. Some strange sounding guy called. Sounded like he was in a big hurry.
Today?
I'm not sure what I wrote down, but...
It's broken.
No, that's why they call it a dog whistle. Only they can hear certain frequencies we can't. Now let's meet some important characters. First is Vice Principal Thorne, who appears to be an asshole to Scott. Then, of course, the girl Scott liked a lot, Pamela, who might be out of his league anyway since she doesn't pay him any mind, but uh-oh, big hairy hands. At this point, it's pretty apparent that this kid is some kind of werewolf child, now starting to actually go through the stages of transformation. Seeing as how we have yet to see him get attacked by one, I can only imagine that one of his parents is hiding something from him. Oh, and let's not forget the obligatory bully jock, Mick.
Acting like a basketball player.
He just delivers hardware, Mick.
Well, then maybe you should get back to delivering it. Come on.
I'd say he'll be the first to die, but I have a suspicion this is not that kind of film where the jock dies to a werewolf attack. Yeah, so far I'm not really feeling these characters. No one's really stuck out as really enjoyable, and roughly 15 minutes into the film, and at most, we're just doing party prep while Scott has growing pains.
But I heard Mr. Murphy, you know, the shop teacher? Yeah. Got his dick caught in a vacuum cleaner.
Anyway, Stiles wants Scott to, well, score a keg for the party by pretending to rob the guy. And by pretending, I mean do the hold up with a toy gun while still paying for the actual keg. That doesn't change the fact you're attempting armed robbery and should be jailed, you crazy teenager. Not that it matters, Scott goes in without the gun, thinking he could just talk to the owner into giving him a keg. At first, it doesn't work, but then...
Give me a keg of beer.
Wait, that's not a werewolf power. That's a vampire ability. You're getting your monster powers mixed up. And now for Stiles to show how he may be the best character in this movie.
Across the USA, then everybody be served like California. You'd see them wearing their baggies, Warachi sandals too, a bushy blonde hair, serving USA.
And I'm just amazed that no one stops him. The traffic lights don't change, and literally nothing to make Scott abruptly stop the van, thus making Stiles fall off. Oh, now the ears are getting pointy. What could this mean? It means his mom was probably Team Edward, because I'm still not convinced he isn't the son of a vampire. Ah, the 80s. A time where every high school student smoked and danced in place in a crowded room. But if you think getting a keg is badass, look, someone stole a police siren light. Now that's hardcore. Besides, apparently everyone brought kegs, so any chance of being cool is totally diminished.
You have to eat this whole bowl of jello.
Well, what do I have to do?
Hold the jello!
Bored now. Scott and Booth get picked for some kind of game, and they get trapped in a closet to presumably make out. What's the point of putting them in there when they can't even see? During their makeout session, Scott goes a bit too far, as it seems his fingernails scratch her. By the time he gets home, we finally get to see a more active transformation. Not too bad, though a lot of those shots were cutaways, and they don't have the same kind of raw power that an American Werewolf in London had. Also, he looks like a Wookiee. There's no way around it, though I suppose it could be a reference to the Wolfman's design.
An explanation is probably long overdue.
Well, that certainly explains the Star Wars Holiday Special casting, but now the question is, who screwed the werewolf? So apparently his father didn't tell him because he hoped it would skip a generation. Yet Scott brings up a good point about this being a problem.
I look forward to a life of stealing babies in the middle of the night and killing chickens. Fearing full moons, dodging silver bullets. Well, thank you, Dad, but no thanks.
Don't believe all that stuff you see in the movies. With certain obvious exceptions, werewolves are people just like anyone else.
Okay, now we're starting to get some good stuff. In this reality, werewolves are, I guess, like the wolf people and wolf children. They can be like wolves, but they can still function like normal humans without all the horror elements that are usually affiliated with them. For the time, this concept is rather unique since they're using it as like a coming-of-age story for high school life. Of course, they're also trying to be funny with this and making the lead character relatable. The only thing is, it's not done very well. They certainly captured high school life in the 80s, or at least how movies tend to depict it, though I'm not completely sold on the character. He's just missing something. Something I would expect from Michael J. Fox. Now, what was it? Oh right, the emotional screams. If this is roughly around the time of Back to the Future, he should have his signature scream. Come on, boy, scream! Emote already! Better tell Stiles what's happening with you.
I gotta talk to someone.
Wait a minute, are you gonna tell me you're a fag? I mean, if you're gonna tell me you're a fag, I don't think I can handle it.
On second thought, tear his throat out. Son of a bitch must die.
What do you think?
Can you do that anytime you want?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I just did.
What can I say? You're beautiful.
Okay, so is what you just said a lie and you really want to bang him now? Though honestly, this is probably a well-suitable reaction. They've had to have been friends for years, so to learn that Scott's a werewolf would be shocking, but once the shock wears off, he's like, yeah, that's pretty cool. It's like he knows what a werewolf is, but more on that in a bit. But first...
Yeah, what can a teen wolf do?
Oh, title drop! Stiles agrees to keep this a secret, though he wants to make this something big for the two. Meanwhile, Booth tries to get Scott to reconsider his relationship with Pamela, which leads into the two reminiscing about their friendship, and this is where more of their chemistry shows, but makes you wonder, when is he gonna get that they are meant for each other? The next basketball game, Scott tries to keep himself from going werewolf, and actually manages to do alright gameplay-wise. However, during a pile-up, the obvious happens. He's like, screw this, I'm gonna keep playing. And now they're like, oh snap, we're losing, better get playing. Now this is more interesting. Instead of having a mass crowd of people panicking, they just get shocked for a bit, but as soon as they realize there's no danger to be had, they just accept it. They know it's Scott, and because they know that, it's easier to accept the fact that this transformation doesn't change who he is, per se. I keep saying that people in movies would have to know what werewolves are based on films and mythology within universe, so to have it actually happen like this would be the best case scenario. Because the worst case scenario would be something like this. But since he hasn't done that, we can assume that he's in full control of his actions, and they know that too. I suppose more questioning on this phenomenon would be expected, though since this happened during a basketball game, I think people are more psyched for the fact that they're actually winning this time. Apparently, this is the first game their team has ever won. In 3 years. Like, really? No one within the 3 years of this school joined up on the team were ever good enough to even win one game? It took a kid becoming a werewolf to do it for you? This is the part of the film where, I guess, the fame starts to get into Scott's head, as now they have merchandise for him, and he's like the most popular student here. Unfortunately, this causes problems for Scott, as he has little time for Booth now, and his teammates don't really like him as much now since the strategy for the games is more or less like,
Get the ball to Tucker.
oh, but hey, at least now he gets to hang with the girl he likes, even taking part in the school play.
Sergeant, burn the fields, and when you're done with that, burn the house.
Looks like someone was willing to make this like that furry Tom Sawyer movie, only with 50% more humans. Seems Pamela is only ever interested in his wolf side.
What happened to the wolf?
Do you just change back and forth whenever you feel like it?
Sure. Well, sometimes I have to get kind of worked up to be the wolf, but it's not too hard.
What do you think about to get worked up?
Damn, everybody wants to bang his wolf form. And who said Disney turned people into furries? Here, there's living furries turning people into them. Too bad the date she set up was just to make Mick jealous. She's not interested in Scott at all, so dumped. At least Scott is gaining some control of his new popularity. Like when Stiles gets him a new van and wants to do the urban surf again. Well, now it's Scott's turn, because if there's one person who can master the art of dancing on top of a moving vehicle, it's a dexterous wolf man. Dad seems a little worried he's letting the popularity get into his head, especially since he's got the basketball team against him, but more importantly, we get to learn why the vice principal is so against Scott.
It goes back a few years. As you know, I loved your mother since we were kids. We always knew we were meant for each other. But for some reason, Rusty Thorne set his cap for her too. And no matter what we tried, he just wouldn't go away. One night, things got a little physical
And you turned into the werewolf.
out of anger, Scott. I turned into the werewolf out of anger. Right in front of his beady little eyes.
So, Thorne knew his father was a werewolf and was jealous he got the girl he liked? Is this meant to imply that Thorne is the bad guy of this movie? Is he going to do something to ruin Scott's life or something? To be honest, Thorne isn't even in this movie all that much. He does something later, but that's really the extent of it.
Frightened that night. Old Rusty Thorne or me? You gotta get a hold of it, son.
Okay, so it's a moral lesson. Better to be yourself and not the wolf, as it could hurt someone. Next day, Scott invites Booth to go to the dance with him, but she'll only go on the condition that he goes as himself and not as the wolf. But since he can't function without it, he decides to just go by himself. Not like it matters, even as a wolf, his dance skills do not improve.
It's giving me the creeps. You've sure got nasty teeth.
But despite everything, Booth just can't hate him and they kiss. However, Mick is still upset that Pamela would rather dance with Scott if she wanted him more than him. So you know what that means.
Stay away from Pamela, she's mine. Stick with your own kind, freak. Like that little tramp.
Let go! Get back and go rip your head right off! Get back here! Come on, freak! I'm not through with you yet!
Dude, you got off lucky. If he were serious, he'd shred you up, eat your liver, and spit out your intestines. Thorne decides to take this opportunity to confront Scott to do what he always wanted to do.
You're never going to play basketball again. You know why? Because you're not going to be here anymore. That's why. You're out of here.
For what? Tearing a shirt off after being shoved? Don't worry, Dad is here to save the day.
Alone. He's a good kid. He's just having a tough time right now. Okay? I knew I could count on you, Rusty.
And that's the end of this little subplot. I guess Scott is feeling the guilt of having to let the wolf control his social life, so he decides to quit being the wolf, meaning he's quitting the play and the basketball team since they only want him there for the wolf. But as his team starts losing the next game, he ends up showing up because... well, since they made it this far, he wants everyone to win without the wolf. But will that be enough?
Shoot it! Shoot it, fat boy!
I guess it does. By combination of working with the team and the teammates actually contributing to the game, they realize, oh snap, we can play well. And they put up a good fight. But it ultimately boils down to Scott as he ends up getting fouled by Mick and has to make the penalty shot, thereby hoping to shut him up once and for all. And that's really it. He gets the girl, he gets respect, and the credits start rolling. I guess everyone learned the lesson of being yourself and only make yourself feel like the wolf in you. Well, whatever. I'm a little mixed on this movie. It's not too bad, but I was expecting a little more from a movie featuring Michael J. Fox as a werewolf. I mean, the setup was there. A high schooler finds out he's part werewolf and becomes like the hero the school needed, but learns that great power comes great responsibility. It could have had some neat scenarios that would further drive that point of being yourself. It just felt slow. Like, while there's build up to this reveal early on, his social life problems didn't really interest me all that much. Scott just felt bland, knowing what his arc would be, and apart from maybe Boof, who did try to form chemistry with him, most of the other characters seemed forgettable. Stiles is... If not for his one comment, he'd be alright as the school egomaniac. The vice principal subplot didn't really go anywhere. It just seemed a little pointless to have. I guess my expectations for what everyone would do were too high, and just got disappointed by the end of it. This wouldn't be the end though. Despite mixed reviews, it did gain a whopping $80 million grossing at the box office out of its $1.2 million budget, which definitely warranted a sequel. However, that one suffered even worse, having a 7% rating on Rotten Tomatoes and only made about $8 million back in grossing. Of course, there was even an animated TV series that lasted 2 seasons, as well as a live-action series that loosely based itself on the original film. And that one reportedly did far better than its predecessors, so good for them. As for this movie, it definitely has its moments. It certainly is the first film I've seen where the society is very accepting of the supernatural, and that they might be well knowledgeable enough due to pop culture perhaps, but I think the TV shows had the right idea to make the story carry out over time than just a single moral in an hour-and-a-half film. Overall, it's not too bad, but it's not memorable. You could do far better with the other Michael J. Fox films out there, and this is not one of them. Next time, we'll look at a werewolf film based on a Stephen King book. Which one, you ask? You'll just have to wait and see, but may I suggest one thing? Bring ammo. At least, the correct ammo?
SpaceMonkeyMafiaStudios.com.
What is that?